about the hour. Uh, I want to take just a second. My name is Chris Cooley. I am a Rochester-based entrepreneur. Most importantly for today, I am one of the team members of Rock Growth. I have been for years now. This format is something that we adopted through COVID and has kind of stuck. And it's a great opportunity to meet other members of our community, of our network. And I'll also get into some of or let Richard get into some of the things that we've been doing in a live format as well. But for today, we're sticking with Zoom. We have some amazing speakers, and I do just want to take a second and acknowledge someone here for a second that behind the scenes puts in a ton of work to make this happen. Richard, thank you so much for being someone in our community who is an innovator and an activist and has many titles. I know that, just having the conversations to get these conversations started is a lot of time and energy. And so as a friend and as a leader, I want to thank you for that. And also say that, we've had time, you and I, Richard, to spend some time hiking and being together. And it's been an honor and a privilege to spend some of our hiking time at the Ganondagan site out in Ganondagan. And so I know one of our speakers, who's here today, will be speaking more about that. But, there's just incredible history in our region. And in order to create this movement and momentum around a new Rochester, I think it's really important to look at what has been part of our past, right? And acknowledge all the things that have gotten us to this point. And so I know Erica, also one of our presenters today, Richard and I were, again, privileged to spend time at an unveiling ceremony for this memorial to Anna Marie Douglass and Annie Douglass. And the power of these places is something that is going to come up in this conversation today. But I also want to just acknowledge and thank our two presenters for their innovative thought process around creating these spaces for us to enjoy. So starting with that, Richard, thank you. Thank you to both of our speakers today. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you all have in store. So with that, Richard, take it away, man.
Oh, man, I love it. We have a bromance going. And I thought you were going to mention Tom Myers, who is the quiet force that holds Rock Growth together. So thank you, Tom. I'll acknowledge the other teammates at the end. But I just had an image of how important oxygen is. And every day we move through life and not acknowledging it until it's absent. And maybe there's a parallel between the beauty and the history that's in our midst in our region that makes Rochester special, that many of us, it's easy to take it for granted during the quotidian events of the day, getting out, going to work and all that. But we have a magnificent legacy. And some of that legacy extends beyond what many folks walk through life thinking as the beginning of Rochester. So we're going to touch upon some of the gifts, and we'll get to our guests in a moment, but I want to remind those who are not familiar, welcome everyone. I'm glad to see all of you here on the screen, that Rock Growth was established about 8 years ago. It's evolved, tremendous volunteer support over the years, community support. I think we have our tentacles in lots of different things. We've evolved, but ultimately, we've always been about empowering the new Rochester. And that's also a very diverse Rochester. We also like to highlight our community's great innovators and entrepreneurs. We have two of them here today. We also instigate creative collisions, which is challenged on a Zoom. Maybe some of that will occur in the chat, but we also have introduced a new event on First Thursdays. It's called First Thursday Creative Collisions. And we had one last Thursday, and next First Thursday, November 3rd, we'll have another at Rock Brewing in the heart of downtown in a neighborhood that is reemerging and transforming very quickly. And finally, everything we do is informed by promoting greater equality of race, class, gender, and age. So let's begin. Peter, I must say, I haven't known you for long, but you've been very impactful upon me. Every time I talk to you, I go away with so much more knowledge. And also, as a good teacher, you also inspire me to go and pursue more knowledge on my own. So, Peter, who are you? This is a question I like to ask, so I don't have to, read a CV or something, and I'll let you use your own words. Thank you.
Okay. Nawes ganat swagwego. Onandawaga ni a ganonza deathdown ni yaso. Ganondagan ni kanange. The language that I'm using is called Onondawaga Gawano. The word Seneca has no meaning in our language, so we actually refer to ourselves as the people of the Great Hill, and that is Onondawaga. And that great hill that we originate from is on the southeastern shore of Lake Ganondagan. People refer to it as South Hill. We refer to it as Nundawao. It's a great hill. In our language, when we introduce ourselves, we say Onondawaga ni a, meaning I am a member of the people of the Great Hill. And we belong to one of 8 clans if we are Onondawaga, 4 on the bird side and 4 on the animal side. We're a matrilineal society. We trace our lineage through our mother, both our nation and our clan. And so my mother being Heron, I'm a member of the Heron Clan of the Seneca Nation. My father was Wolf Clan, Seneca Nation. My clan has given me a name. And so I use that in my introduction, Ganonza Death Down. And mostly that refers to responsibilities that I have within our ceremonial life. And I will be departing here, go and participate in an upcoming, I guess you could call it ceremony, recitation, however, that will start next Sunday. So soon I will be heading back to my home community of Cattaraugus. Cattaraugus is one of 4 Seneca reservations in Western New York. Mine is 35 miles basically to the south of Buffalo, kind of south and a bit west of Buffalo. But I've been living in Rochester and I have been the historic site manager until this past February. I managed Ganondagan State Historic Site in Victor, New York, the site of a 17th century Seneca town. And for part of that time, I lived right on the site in housing that was provided by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Ganondagan is a national landmark. It's a state historic site. It's the only historic site in the state of New York dedicated to a Native American theme. And it is very unique in being a national landmark that is east of the Mississippi River. There are many to the west, but very few, especially Native American, national landmarks in the East Coast or someplace in the East. So I retired in February, and after 34 years as the historic site manager, and during that time, I was fortunate to do a number of things. One was to recreate a Seneca bark longhouse, full scale, based on an archaeological excavation, and that is available for visitors until the end of this month. We close it at the end of October. It's a particularly important attraction for 4th graders who are required to study a unit on the Haudenosaunee. We, the Seneca, are part of the Haudenosaunee, the larger confederacy made up of 6 nations: Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, and Tuscarora. And so 4th graders study us from Western New York to the Hudson River, really. And from there down, they're interested in the Mohican, the Lenni Lenape, or Delaware, and other peoples that lived to the south. But at any rate, so getting back to Ganondagan, after the Bark Longhouse, which opened in 1998, I began to work on getting a new building or getting a building built at Ganondagan. And that resulted in the Seneca Art and Culture Center, which opened in 2015. It is a 17,000 plus square foot building. It has a gallery. It has an auditorium space, orientation theater, classrooms. It has a catering type kitchen. It has an archival space, office space for our workers that are there. And we really do a lot, of programming based on the fact that we have an organization called the Friends of Ganondagan, the not-for-profit arm of Ganondagan that helps us to receive funding and then be able to present and then compensate our presenters, whether they're dancers or singers or craftspeople or whatever it is that they're doing. We're able to pay those performers when they complete whatever we've asked them to come and do. It gets rid of the very cumbersome method. If you have to hire them through the state, try to present, an invoice to the state, wait for the state bureaucracy to cut a check and get it to your performers. It's untenable. So we had to create a friends organization, and they helped us by receiving the funding that was necessary to build the Seneca Art and Culture Center. And that, was a sort of a pathway for foundations, corporations, individuals to make donations so that we could build this permanent building and increase the programming that we did. When I first arrived, there were no buildings other than the manager's house and a few falling down farm structures that had nothing to do with the 17th century. And so we wanted to recreate and also educate people about that time period. This is really the home territory of the Seneca people. If we drew a line north and south between Seneca and Cayuga Lake, that is our eastern boundary. Our northern boundary was Lake Ontario, and original western boundary, was on the Genesee River, roughly around the Genesee River, Rochester, and and then south to a point above the Pennsylvania state line. Through warfare, through armies coming through our territories and trying to erase us and remove us, we were pushed to Western New York. And at one point in time, we lived where we now call the city we now call Buffalo was the Buffalo Creek Reservation, where our people were living after the Revolutionary War. So I've kind of done a little rambling there, but I think I've given you a little picture of who we are, who I am, and where I come from. So I'm going to kick it back to Richard.
Yeah, so let's spend a little more time on the history, because what I believe occurred is that there was a population of people that saw the bounty of this region, the fertile soil, the rich hunting environment, water in abundance, and navigable water. And there was a whole civilization here that existed, and the first Europeans that they developed some relationship with would have been the French, with the Jesuits following in suit. It often happened the religion followed the commerce, and there was this whole period in the 17th and 18th century where there was a relationship with the French, and that preceded Nathaniel Rochester and all of the migration that would have been more associated with Anglo, right?
Yes, actually, we were trading with the French, the Dutch, and the English, and what they were after from us was beaver pelts. Beaver pelts were being taken back to Europe to be turned into hats. There's a very fine hair very close to the hide of a beaver that is very water resistant and very soft in that form, from which they were making felt, a felt disc, and then forming that felt disc over a wooden mold and creating hats. It's kind of hard to imagine that beaver hats could create an economy, but it certainly was a part of the economy of the French, of the Dutch, and the English, so much so that Louis XIV, King of France, wanted a monopoly on the fur trade. He wanted to prevent we, the Seneca, from trading with the Dutch or the English, and literally sent an army to try and wipe us out to achieve that aim, to stop us from trading with the others. One thing that we controlled during this time period of the fur trade of the 17th century, we controlled the Niagara River. The Niagara River provided access to the Western Great Lakes. So we were known as, and we still are known as, the keepers of the Western Door. We allowed people to travel through our territories to obtain beaver pelts, which at the time, the greatest abundance existed in the Western Great Lakes. There was such a demand that they were nearly depleted here in Western New York. And so we were conducting trading parties to the further west, or we were allowing people to go there and kind of extracting a certain toll in furs when they came back through our territory. It's a very complex story, but again, in 1687, the French king sent an army to try and wipe us out.
And all this is depicted in really accessible detail at Ganondagan. But the point is that the people of the Haudenosaunee, they were cohabitating with all these Europeans that arrived and conducting commerce. And I want to fast forward for a moment because, I mean, we could go on for a wonderful time. I find it fascinating. We're brief, but I want to keep it sort of concise. What I've learned in my research is that treaties are very important. In fact, at the founding of our nation, to enter a treaty was important for the US because it expressed some legitimacy that we were a sovereign nation and independent from Great Britain. And we were entering in and have a history of entering in treaties with the Native American people who were also treated as sovereign nations. So when I visited the American Museum, the Smithsonian Museum of the
American Indian, the National Museum of the American Indian.
They have a permanent exhibition of treaties. And the first treaty that is highlighted is the Treaty of Canandaigua from 1794. And you may want to reference the anniversary coming up. Would you share a little bit about that? And
Sure. So I want to preface this by saying this. In the US Constitution, it says treaties are the supreme law of the land. Okay, and that is very early on. Article 2 or 3, something like that. I can't remember at this moment. Of the US Constitution saying, you know, how important treaties are. And of course, the early treaties that they're talking about are made with Native Americans. They're made with us, the Six Nations, really. And so a very important treaty after the Revolutionary War was concluded, there was a Treaty of Paris in 1783. We, the Native American, the Haudenosaunee, were not mentioned at all in that. Although we had sided, some of us, with the English and others had sided with the Americans, and we were very involved in this conflict taking place within our territories, at the signing of the treaty, there was no mention of us. And as a consequence, there were settlers who believed that since the English were defeated, any lands that they had claimed would naturally revert to any Americans or any revolutionaries or any people who had come into the country. And so they were coming onto our land and killing us in order to take the land from us. This is after the end of the Revolutionary War. So we began a series of trips to Philadelphia, then the capital, you know, of this fledgling 13 confederated states, I guess I would say. And so we made trips there to express to George Washington that we were very concerned, of course, by the actions of his people and asking him to get control of them. And we needed to have some type of a treaty. Well, the first treaty that they wanted to settle was in 1784, and that was really just a grab of all of our land. That's really what it amounted to. So that was unsatisfactory. So we went back again throughout the early 1790s until we got George Washington to agree to a treaty conference in Canandaigua, New York. And the person he sent to negotiate that treaty is a man named Timothy Pickering. And Timothy Pickering was a very interesting guy. He wrote a letter to George Washington and he said, you know, the terms of this treaty that we are negotiating, I want to make sure that these terms are upheld because I don't want to be called a liar by anyone. This is Timothy Pickering who's coming to negotiate. I've been to his home in Salem, Massachusetts. They have one of those letters literally framed and on the wall, a copy of that original letter. And so Pickering came, he sat down with members of the Six Nations, and we hammered out a treaty of peace between the Six Nations and the United States. And ultimately, that treaty is ratified by the Senate in 1795. It is signed by George Washington. And what it says is, get this, guys and ladies, that from the Genesee River to Presque Isle in Pennsylvania, just to the east of, to the west of Erie, Pennsylvania, all of that land belongs to the Seneca Nation. From the Genesee River to Presque Isle in Pennsylvania, all of Western New York belongs to the Seneca Nation, 1794, okay? And all of the lands that are currently occupied by the Cayuga, the Onondaga, and the Oneida belong to them, okay? And we are going to give them the free use and enjoyment of that land and not disturb them, because in exchange, we, the Haudenosaunee, are going to relinquish our claims to Ohio and to Pennsylvania and to West Virginia, portions of that, and we are going to allow those who have come into our territories free access to the waterways, and we're going to let you build a 1 mile wide road from the mouth of the Niagara River to Buffalo, basically, okay? These are some of the terms of the treaty, in exchange for which the United States will set aside $4,500 to expend for our needs, right? They're still expending that same $4,500 today. And so what happens is every year, the Army Corps of Engineers ships to our communities bolts of cloth, which are muslin, and basically could be used to line your curtains. They don't have many other uses, that particular kind of muslin, but the United States is still literally shipping annually bolts of muslin to our nations. We who are members of the nation can go to our clerk's office and get a yard of that cloth as our payment, you might say, ongoing from the United States for this treaty we made in 1794.
Great trivia, but obviously there's a lot of anguish, hardship, bloodshed over the years, and don't want to dismiss that. So I just, every time I'll drive west on the thruway, and also I want to highlight, if we could just take 1 minute, because I want to move to Erica. You know, we're celebrating the bicentennial for the Erie Canal, but then again, we glorify these accomplishments, but there was also, it was at expense. There was a human toll. And if you don't mind briefly recounting what you shared with me about the terminus of the Erie Canal in Buffalo.
So the Erie Canal was completed in 1825, and the terminus for it, they wanted to be in Buffalo. Well, that was, I had said earlier, the Buffalo Creek Reservation. And as a result of the war, the Revolutionary War, where Washington sent the Sullivan-Clinton campaign through our territories, and they destroyed 40 towns, we became refugees of the British who were occupying Fort Niagara. And after, as the war wound down and the treaty was signed of 1783, we took up residence in what is now called Buffalo, right? So in order for the Erie Canal to be effective and for, you know, the United States to control this western terminus, they wanted to get us off that land in Buffalo. And so the first fraudulent treaty that was created was in 1838. 1838 treaty was asking us to relocate ourselves west of the Missouri River. And, so that commerce would flow through the city of Buffalo, across the Erie Canal, connect to the Mohawk River, connect to the Hudson River, and ultimately connect to New York City. So the canal was, from the standpoint of the United States, an engineering marvel. However, as that canal was built, as it was extended eastward, of course, it displaced and it, disrupted all of our lands where we were still living. And, those lands that were guaranteed to us by the Canandaigua Treaty. So this is kind of the history of the Erie Canal. And that history, of course, is not talked about at all. Our displacement or our removal. What we talk about is what an engineering marvel it was. And, and of course it did. It brought raw materials in from the Great Lakes, and then those same manufactured items went back out and through the Great Lakes and went all over the world, these things that were built.
Well, thank you for bringing us within a decade of when Frederick Douglass moved, and Frederick and Anna Murray moved to Rochester, 1848. And if we could put Erica on, that would be great. So I think, I'm using an African term of Sankofa. I'm not trying to dwell on some of the, unfortunate things of our past. It's with this knowledge that we can move forward and build a better community. So Erica, welcome. I heard him reference Ohio, which I know you're hightailing to in a moment. You're an Ohio woman, huh?
I
Born and
am.
bred, yeah. And
I
welcome
am.
to the community. You arrived several years ago. Tell us who you are briefly, because I want you to share also the good work you're already doing for Rochester.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Erica Mock. I'm the executive director of the Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives. We are a abolitionist and anti-racist nonprofit organization founded by the direct descendants of Frederick Douglass, who also happened to be the direct descendants of Booker T. Washington, grandchildren on both sides. And we are headquartered here in Rochester, right here on Main Street at the intersection of Main and St. Paul. And we are focused on the struggle for racial equity and, anything to end systems of human exploitation. So the majority of our work, the core of our work, does revolve around one of Frederick Douglass's most famous quotes, that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So we are in the business, if you will, of educating our children on the preventative side through prevention and education of anti-human trafficking or modern day slavery. So we have written curriculum that we work very deeply and intimately with schools, age appropriate, K through 12, teaching teachers how to teach and look out for those systems of exploitation that might be occurring even right in front of them in their own classrooms. It's been very effective. We have measurable access and measurable accomplishments with that curriculum in excess of 800,000 students across the United States and in multiple countries throughout the world. I don't want to talk too much about me specifically, but my journey really started when I was about 12 years old by reading the narrative of Frederick Douglass, as well as Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And as stars would align, it would end up leading me in my studies to the Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives, which I've been a part of going on my 12th year now. And just this week will mark the 1 year that I've been their executive director. I moved to Rochester in the summer of 2020, so very new. I can tell you that I have been acclimated quite quickly. And it kind of all started, of course, with the understanding of what happened to Daniel Prude. So that really was a shapeshifter in my understanding of the pain of this community and how I could best be of service by not pretending as if I came here to help, But because my liberation was also bound up with this community, that's where I would be best of service.
Tremendous. So you have the great fortune of working with Ken Morris and Nettie, who have been coming to Rochester for a bunch of years now, and they decided just several years ago. Again, you also arrived months after COVID, and let's not forget the last several years have been a little confusing in terms of information sharing, socializing, getting announcements out. It was just several years ago that the Frederick Douglass Family Initiative committed to Rochester as its home base.
We did. So we've been in existence since 2007, actually. But because we didn't have roots, as far as brick and mortar here in New York, or really anywhere, we kind of all operated remotely in this fight for the prevention of education of children. But we decided in 2019 that we kind of needed to bring it back home. And because, of course, Frederick Douglass is buried here, it seemed like the most logical place. But it also seemed like the place that made the most sense because Frederick chose to live here for 25 years. And I really we believe that had the arson not happened to his home on South Avenue, that he would have stayed, but it was important that we set roots somewhere where we believe that Frederick sought out the most need. And so that place ended up being Rochester.
It's interesting to tie into our last event with Laura Hill. That arson was perpetrated by an individual in Rochester. Let's just say that what some of the mythology around the South being the location where all of this festered is not correct. I mean, he faced certain challenges in Rochester, although it was a community he held close to his heart, so much so that he requested being buried here. So
that's right. So, I'm glad that you bring that up, Richard, because, those are some of the same systems that, of course, this community is still rattling with today. When you read, and I always like to tell people it's not the Googleable information that you read about Frederick Douglass on the very first page to have sound bites with, but it's actually what he endured, he and his family endured here in Rochester that really pushed forward not only the courage to stay all of those years, but the courage to be able to recognize that even though he would really be kind of almost sacrificing the safety of his family potentially, but that there was that need to continue to speak out because in many places in Western New York, this was one of the last stops on that freedom, that trip to freedom, for many freedom seekers. We don't like to call them fugitive slaves because that would imply that you were doing something illegal. So actually to state that they are freedom seekers instead is, I think, a little bit more accurate. But you're exactly right on, the Black phobia. And I'm going to use Frederick's words here because this is something that he actually wrote about. It actually was written in the North Star this past week in 1850. So it's very timely of this conversation, but he talked about Black phobia. And what he meant by that was, there are people that are all too comfortable being served by people of color, using people of color to accomplish their own initiatives. But when it comes to the fight, aren't willing to stand arm in arm with them, and he really talked about that. And he talked about, the true test of freedom from Black phobia, is to be found in entire willingness to associate on terms of equity with all men, irrespective of their complexion, right? Irrespective of whatever their views are. But it be best in the estimation of a single hair, has the seeds of the disease within him, and will only require a Negro hating atmosphere about him to make himself, feel better, and to justify the inequities. So, he faced those things, even walking on the streets here in Rochester to, the North Star.
So
along with his children.
there's a term within the historian community called presentism, when you apply modern sensibility to the past, which is fraught with problems, because obviously the individuals we're reflecting on lived in a very different time, culture, they were drinking different water, they had different technology. But this is a moment as we evolve, and perhaps I would suggest we are in ways improving and getting more enlightened, to address certain things that were absent, and in a different era. And I want to highlight for a moment the work you're doing around recognizing the family, the Anna Murray, Annie, the other, because it's quite common for us to identify an individual, an incredible individual who encapsulates so much, but there's a community of support around every great historical figure. So I would like you to share some of that work that involves the corner of Alexander and Monroe, obviously the Mount Hope Cemetery, and what you're attempting to do to draw greater attention to the broader family, particularly the women.
Yes, well, particularly the women, and I have to give it ode because you guys can't see it, but yeah, I'm repping today. I've got the Anna shirt on for sure. We here at FDFI like to say that there was no Frederick without Anna. People don't understand her contribution, mostly because it wasn't talked about. Frederick did not speak on it, so they like to say that it didn't exist. But without her ability to have the items that she sold, like a feather bed and her household items, in order to help to provide money for his escape, those things wouldn't have happened. But she encouraged him. He already had it in him, but she was just able to kind of stir it up a little bit more. And then she took care of the children. She kept the books. She made sure that the money he sent home, that she doubled it by the time he got back. A lot of people talk about how brilliant the children were, but Frederick was on the road a lot of those times. So Anna was responsible for their education. So a lot of people don't really tend to look at her, but they need to understand that he didn't write about his family so intimately for their own protection. And that was a way to be able to move silently. For example, like the children participating with Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad. People don't know about that. They don't know that because the children were so unassuming that they were able to be in places where adults could not be. They don't know, or some may know, about the fact that Frederick was on the road so much, somebody had to run the North Star. He taught his children how to run the paper. Rosetta dictated and read articles and edited articles for Frederick, and was even known to write some of the articles that ended up in the North Star. So this was a complete freedom fighting collective that has transpired and extended down through their lineage.
Erica, but what you've done, you've also, all right, give us a brief explanation. I'm not sure everyone here is familiar with what you did at Mount Hope Cemetery.
Oh, sure. So,
so when they go visit the cemetery, they make sure they take it in.
Well, that was a labor of love, but again, because we want to make sure that the women in his life were acknowledged. Never before, until this past September the 3rd, Anna Murray Douglass was not known. A lot of people didn't know that she was actually buried there, as well as their 10-year-old daughter, Annie. And so through a very long story and series of events, that same narrative of of controlling the truth was getting ready to transpire at Mount Hope Cemetery. And I saw a need, and the need was to educate and be truthful. So we were able to, with the help of the Community Foundation and Historic Preservation Grant, place headstones for both Anna Murray Douglass and Annie Douglass now at Mount Hope.
It was a beautiful ceremony, and it's there for, well, many, many years, hopefully eternity, if you will.
Well, they've been there for quite a few already, so I'm hoping will be just as
Well,
long. But just considering the fact that Frederick Douglass died February the 20th, and Anna Marie Douglass was exhumed from Washington, D.C. and reinterred at Mount Hope just 2 days later, and then a couple of days after that, Frederick was then placed next to her, is incredible in and of itself. But to just know that their daughter and his wife will be forever memorialized was super important. But I will tell you that I appreciate you saying that, Richard, that I did that. I had the great privilege of being able to write the epitaph on those headstones, and that in and of itself is just wild to me. But I will tell you from the moment, I'll share this with you all because it's super important. I didn't do that. Anna did that. I was just the conduit. So, I really want people to understand that, because she was always the conduit, and it just extended, and I got to be honored enough to participate in that as well.
I want to commend you also. For many on the call are familiar with the renaming of the airport. There is an initiative underway to capitalize on the renaming and deliver a more powerful message about Frederick Douglass and why he's relevant today. And I want to commend you for stepping up to the plate as well and agreeing to work as a volunteer to express the renaming visibly in the airport. And that's an ongoing project, right, Erica? Mm-hmm.
It is. So just most recently, we do have the renaming commission. I am a voting member, just for transparency. I am a voting member appointed by the county exec on this commission. And just a little under 2 weeks ago, I was named as the project manager for the observation area of the airport under arts and education.
Cool. So it's 12:45, just about a moment before, and I want to break to the PSAs, our public service announcements, where we give other great contributors to the community 2 minutes. Please keep it concise, no more than 2 minutes, and share who you are, what you're doing, and how the community can be helpful to you. So Tom, if you're there, I'd like to first recognize Daniel Sneed. I know he's present. I think all four of our presenters are present. So Daniel, all right, there we go, Mr. Best Bet. I love that hoodie. So Daniel, please.
How you guys doing today? I'm actually setting my timer for 2 minutes right now so I don't go over. All right, so Richard, I just want to say thank you for having me on today. Really exciting, to just hear about what's happening with Erica and the Frederick Douglass family and just all of the work there, and as well as the work with the Ganondagan as well. Super exciting to hear just the history of, what the native and indigenous people were able to just have set up and do. So really good stuff on the call so far. All right, so who am I? What am I? So I'm a coach, and I am a coach that you didn't know your young people needed. So primarily, I look to work with ages 14 to 25. And my goal is to help them to develop what I call social trades or high value social skills. So networking, sales, public speaking, teaching, content creation, and leadership. And I teach those skills from a position of how they interact with the marketplace and how to begin to monetize them and use them in a powerful way as quickly as possible. Because we know that those are the most valuable skills on the planet, no matter where you go. The people that are creating the lifestyle that they want and earning the income that they want, they're using those skills. And so I look at my own story, right? And I'll parallel it to sports. I played basketball for years, but the first time that I had a trainer was in my mid-20s, and that trainer taught me things about basketball that I did not know existed. And I saw basketball in a whole different light. And so my goal is to do the same thing with our young people with these skills. So Best Bet is a bespoke course. It is high touch, and there's an immense amount of value in it. It comes to life with weekly coaching calls. And you can find me on Instagram or YouTube at Instagram Best Bet Dan. and YouTube is just Best Bet Skills Academy. So I got 2 seconds left. Richard, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dan. And it's been enjoyable sort of helping you out as a startup. You're great. And again, what I'm hearing from Peter as well, the educational focus of the Ganondagan Center, the programs for 4th graders, Erica and FDFI are focused on the youth as well as you. Those are the future of our region, and it's consistent with our mission of empowering the new Rochester. Do we have Rashad, Mr. Parker? Are you present? Can we get you on the screen?
Hi, good afternoon.
Rashad, representing the 9th Floor Collective. Go ahead. I don't see you yet. I'm pausing. Yeah.
My video is, I can see myself, so hopefully
this
you
is
guys can
Tom's
see me
job. There we go. There you go.
The user interface isn't easy finding people, guys.
So Rashad Parker of the 9th Floor Artist Collective.
Yes. So I am the creative director for the 9th Floor Artist Collective. I am one of the founding members with my brothers, Yaqub Shabazz and Najee Quick. We were fortunate enough to be able to have a space in the Wilder building at 1 East Main Street on the 9th floor. And we're grateful to Rock Growth and their support for this startup. I'm an entrepreneur, and in my role at the 9th Floor Artist Collective as creative director, we really want to, let the community know that we do have a 2020 vision for artist education, creative inspiration, and wellness to serve as an equitable resource for entrepreneurship leadership. We took our time with getting the space ready. We happened to be in an old law firm on the 9th floor. Peter Heller was there for years and years, and we reimagined and transformed that space into becoming an artist gallery, a classroom education center, and multimedia along with artist spaces. And so what we would like to do is really provide a cultural hub for artists of color in the city of Rochester to be able to come there, have a meeting space, to be able to be inspired by the environment, to continue creating work, and to also have access to public art gallery spaces and have that work be presented professionally. Those are just some of the services that we provide. We're multifaceted, we're mission-based, and we really want to increase the healthy diversity of artists of color having access to those spaces. Most recently, we did a successful exhibition at City Hall in the Link Gallery. It was recognized by our mayor, Malik D. Evans, who provided a personalized note to us and thank you card, which is great. And so we're really trying to establish ourselves as being that in the community to provide these spaces for artists of color to be their best selves and to embark upon a role for entrepreneurship. Today, I am reaching out to all of you, and thank you again to Richard Glazer for allowing me the opportunity for financial sponsorship. Again, we have a 2020 vision to provide 20 people with retreats. We have a art and mindfulness wellness retreat for Black men, and then also 20 folks to be able to come and take art classes at the 9th Floor Artist Collective. And so with the retreats, they are $100 a piece. We want to again sponsor 20 folks for $2,000, and then 50 classes for 20 individuals for $1,000. And so your support today would really, really help us do that, achieve that goal. And you can do so by going to our website, 9thfloorartistcollective.com. Thank you.
All right, this is great. Thank you, Rashad. Oh, there we go. Angelina Hilton, you're unmuted.
Yay! Hey, everybody. What a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much, Richard, for inviting me in and giving me this spot. So let me introduce myself. My name is Angelina Marie Hilton. I am a wife. I am a mom. I am a woman in recovery, a grateful believer in Jesus, and a local entrepreneur. I am also a native of the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska, and of Iowa descent. And what an amazing amazing time it is to be Indigenous. For those of you who are not aware, we just celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day in Rochester, New York, only Indigenous Peoples Day, as its own day of celebration and education and healing. And so I'm really excited to have been a part of that. And I'm coming to you today. I mentioned I'm a local entrepreneur. My husband and I own Pop Rock, which was known as the cereal bar on East Avenue, but now we are a pop culture cafe that is relocated down to Parcel 5, where we were once in a major artery of the city. We are now in the heart, which gives us a huge level of responsibility to build community. Our core values are fun, creativity, community, and safety, with a core focus on service in and out of the cafe. And the reason being for that is because we as a family have experienced tough times, and we have gained support from our community to help us to get back up and be able to serve. And so part of that, what that looks like is for the last 6 months since April, we have been serving our community free lunches. We've been bringing in guest chefs, collaborating with the commissary, and then having food donated from other organizations, where we give this guest chef an opportunity to create a dish. So that way we can feed Jerry on the bench and Jerry, the CEO, and in the penthouse, the exact same meal with dignity. And so in November, I shared with my husband that I wanted to make sure that we brought in an Indigenous chef to introduce the culture to our community, which just so happens to be the fourth Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. And then the day after that is Small Business Saturday. And so as an Indigenous woman entrepreneur who is also a Native creative, I feel the calling to bring in Indigenous artists and makers for this Native made market. And right now I am gathering support from local businesses, local organizations and individuals who are interested in providing in-kind sponsorships, monetary sponsorships. We have vendors coming in from Erie, from Salamanca, and locally. And then I need your help. So if you could take a look at the link tree that I'm going to put in right now, and it will go into more information as to what we're doing. I would love to have your support. So thank you for letting me share.
This is great. So I know we've held pretty steady around 40. We do record this and post it, but also word of mouth is great. It's very effective. Now we have social media that can accelerate the transmission of information. So those present, please share this. Let's get it going. Todd, you have some useful information to share. Todd, by the way, is also a member of the organizational committee for Rock Growth. Thanks for the work you do. But Todd, you are on mute, and then you have your 2 minutes. There you go.
How you going? I thought you were in charge. I am representing two things today. They're both in the same vein. One is called Shop Rochester Arts. It's that simple. And it supports artists. I created this site. It's free for artists. It's a directory of local artists where you can go and find artists, support them, shop them. And we're still getting artists to sign up, but don't let that keep you from going and checking it out and spreading the word about it. And the second site is just the same, and but it's for businesses, more your brick and mortar businesses, and that is shopcoolrock.com. This is something that I first began as a photographer, because I'm always photographing for local small businesses and entrepreneurs getting started, whether it be products or headshots for articles, whatever they need. And that's a place where you can go and find local small businesses. And with both of these things, there's resources for them. For the artist site, we have meetings. I help them not just on the art end and how to advertise, but turn them on to accountants. You know, a lot of times these are people just starting out. So we offer a lot of resources to both of them. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. And thank you for your time.
and thank you for your help. So yeah, we're running out of time. We'd like to keep this punctual. We're going to have our upcoming events, obviously November 3rd, I referenced it before, is the unstructured social activity first Thursday, Creative Collisions. It will be at Rock Brewing. Next month, we'll also feature Mike Collier. In this format, an interview I'll be conducting with him. He's the founder of Foundry Digital, which within 5 years is up to 170 employees. It's in the Bitcoin crypto space and attracting talent like, you know, it's incredible what he's accomplished basically. Stay tuned, come back in a month, is incredible. And they're building a culture there that is exemplary and cutting edge. So I want to thank, I'm going to part with a quote I pulled off of Peter Jemison's site, because one thing we didn't call attention to is that he's, first of all, he's a national figure in the Native American community, nationally recognized, but he's also an acclaimed artist. But let me just for a moment thank Jake Kavanaugh, George Maruri, Josh Batres for their help, Josh Krager, Mike Thaney, my pal Chris Cooley and Tom Myers. They're all supporters. We're open and you know, anyone who wants to contribute in whatever form, please approach us, any of us directly, or info@Rock Growth or via social media. But I'm not sure if Peter's still here, but and I didn't warn him that it would be doing this in the final minute or so, but I think it's a reflection on how Rock Growth and many of us, how we evolved and how many of us think, because it's the confluence of creativity along with entrepreneurship, innovation. So hopefully you're not embarrassed, but it's right there in public format at your site. Art helps people to see not just a particular piece of art, but to see the world about you with fresh eyes. The best of art opens our eyes to see beauty, even in things we scarcely noticed previously. Where we saw disorder and little visual stimulus, we now have a new perception. The art may be abstract, it might be an assemblage of objects that individually are banal, but through a new juxtaposition, our mind perceives an order, a meaning greater than the parts. So I wanted to bring that up. Not everything is logical, engineering, linear. Art fills in many of the pieces. So I see a beautiful artwork behind you, Erica. I know Peter creates beautiful art. And I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy this magnificent fall day in our beautiful community. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.